Okay, class is in session once again in your ongoing pursuit of your Bachelor's of Multifamily Science here at the Apartment Academy, the industry's only operations-focused podcast and your Institute for Higher NOI. I'm the Dean of the Apartment Academy, your host, Daniel Cunningham. Today's professor is Stephanie Anderson, Senior Director of Communications at Grace Hill, and we had a conversation that covered an area of operations that I think folks don't think about enough, which is the mental health and well-being of the people on site. It's a difficult business. It's a difficult career in many respects. Rewarding as well, but we have to pay attention to how people are feeling about their job every day. And Stephanie makes some really great points that I think you'll enjoy. Here she is. Hello, Professor Anderson. Welcome to Lecture Hall 101 here at the Virtual Apartment Academy. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Daniel. I'm thrilled to be here and thrilled to be a professor, by the way.
Yes, well-earned credentials for sure. In fact, why don't we talk about that? You are Senior Director of Communications at Grace Hill. We can talk for a second about what Grace Hill is and the services you provide. But how did you tell us a little about your journey in the industry? How did you end up where you are?
I do have an interesting journey. I've been in the industry for over 16 years now. And when I started, like many of your listeners, I had no real intentions to stay in the industry. It was something that was kind of fly by the seat of my pants. I started never knowing that I was going to stay throughout college. And then after graduating college, I actually found a home here in multifamily, like many of us do. And I have worked a multitude of roles over the years, starting as a part-time leasing consultant, working my way up through property manager, regional property manager, and then went into the world of training. And then I actually went over to the side of the nonprofit association world with the National Apartment Association, and then now are currently on the supplier partner side. So I feel like I have this really cool 360 view of the industry, being an owner operator, transitioning to the nonprofit, and then now on the supplier side. So it's kind of cool to be able to see things from all angles, and I enjoy sharing that perspective with others.
And yeah, that is actually a very wide berth of things that you've been involved in. Is there I guess it's maybe not a fair question to ask where you are now, but compare for a moment those different roles. What's the most rewarding about each one of those roles, site and then at the trade level, and now on the vendor side?
Ultimately, giving back. And I think that transitions to each role, but who you're giving back to alters as you go from each side of the business. You know, when you're working at the site team level, you're really able to invest in your team members and prepare them for their next role, especially once you get to that property manager position. And then you're giving back to your residents. We are in such an intimate business providing housing for people. It is essential, and we have to make it amazing. And so to do that and to give back is such a rewarding thing, even though it can be very stressful. And then going over to the nonprofit association world, it's really all about giving back to the members and educating them, making them better. Advocacy was a large part of that, which I was not heavily involved in prior to doing. So that was really cool to really get into the government side and the legislative side of things to see what's happening and how those decisions that are made on Capitol Hill really affect all of us. And then now on the supplier side, partnering with companies to make them better. You know, oftentimes when I was on site or even at the regional level, we would come up with challenges that we would try to overcome ourselves. And realistically, being able to partner with your suppliers to find those viable solutions that work best and take the knowledge that they have to apply it to what you're doing to make your operations better and streamline that. It's really rewarding to be able to do that. And I think some people don't even see it as that, from that side of things. And maybe I'm able to see it a little bit differently being that 360 perspective, but it's very, very rewarding.
And how does Grace Hill partner with its clients? What are the services that Grace Hill provides?
So we're most known for our training courses. That's probably what people will say back in the day. When I first started in the industry, I was first introduced to Grace Hill on day one through our Vision platform, taking those liability courses like fair housing and preventing sexual harassment. So that was kind of my first introduction. And then learning that there's career path development and that you can expand your learning, not just based on those compliance courses, but taking things and electives that are interesting to you. you, or courses that are going to help you to level up when you're ready for that next step in your career, whatever that trajectory should be. Outside of that, we are really big into surveys now. Surveys are where it's at. They were really starting to get big in our industry pre-pandemic. Obviously, the pandemic escalated that, and things are really, really big on the survey side because we don't know what we don't know. We need to ask residents, we need to ask employees what they love, what they don't love, what we can do better, to be able to see the good, bad, and the ugly, and to make sound business decisions. And we help our clients do just that, collecting that data and then making meaningful decisions. And mystery shops, of course. So, I mean, we really do so much. I always tell people, Daniel, if you haven't seen Grace Hill in the past 12 months, you have to come see us because we have changed so much in the past 35 years.
Yeah, I mean, certainly Grace Hill has been around a long time, and people feel like they know what it is Grace Hill does. And I'd be surprised if there were anybody out there who didn't have some impression of the company. But you guys have certainly grown a lot. You just made a recent, very interesting, and I think strategically smart acquisition. And so, yeah, if people don't know, if you haven't talked to you in a while, it's a good time. Now, with all of the responsibilities as a senior director of communication, all the things that Grace Hill can talk about, all the levels of authority and all the areas of interest that Grace Hill addresses, what's foremost on your mind in terms of what you guys are talking, what you in particular are talking about today that maybe people don't think about?
There's a lot that we're talking about. I would say top of mind really is mental well-being. Mental health is something that many years ago was really taboo to talk about, especially in the workplace. Then the pandemic hit, and people had no option but to start bringing it to the forefront because it was crucial. It was that whole blend, right, between what was happening in work and that was transitioning over to your personal life and vice versa. So we had to start using those uncomfortable terms. People didn't even like saying the word mental health out loud. They felt like it was a word that just had negative connotation. And now we're using it and talking about it. And I think what's crucial is we're past the point of acknowledgement, which is great, baby steps here. But now where are we going with it? How do we get into translating, talking about it openly and actually making moves, putting our money where our mouth is and doing things for employees and residents as it pertains to mental well-being?
So that sounds great. What does that mean though to functionally to somebody who's in the field, who maybe certainly cares about the mental well-being of their teams, but like, where do you start with that?
It's a tough question. One of the things that I tell people right off of the bat, something simple you can do in your personal life as well as your business life, is asking someone how they're doing and then actually listening to them. Look for the signs of what they're telling you and actually listen, because you want to listen and not just, hey, Daniel, how you doing today? Because oftentimes we say those things because it's a courtesy and it's manners and we're doing it, but we're so busy in our lives that what you tell me back, I'm kind of like shrugging it off because we've said hi, and I've moved on. But essentially starting with something so simple, and especially as we talk about our employees, how we're gauging how they're doing, truly how they're doing, and not just, doing it for lip service.
And what would you say are the major ways that folks on site are struggling from a mental health standpoint? What's impacting them? What's so hard about operating apartment buildings that people are their mental health is at risk?
Pre-pandemic, everything was hard on site because it's changed over the years from what the expectations are for the on-site teams. It is, depending on the company, can be a lot of reporting and paperwork. We're still doing a lot more in terms of technology. There's no true tech stack out there that does everything. So your teams are probably having multiple sign-on usernames, multiple systems that they're using and training on. And sometimes those systems don't talk to one another. So that's adding a little bit more work on them. And of course, the customer experience is a big priority right now. Being able to drop everything the moment that the phone rings, a person comes in, and you're doing a virtual tour, whatever the case may be, you really have to focus on that customer at hand and providing them the best experience from the moment they come in the door until the moment they leave your community. And when I say leave, I mean moving out, not just on move-in day or when they leave that day from the tour. So it's a lot that you have to focus on being on the site teams. Then the pandemic has happened, which means residents are at their wits' end in some cases. They're going through some very difficult things, and ultimately they're taking things out on the site team. Sometimes not meaning to, but that's adding a lot of conflict that comes into the workplace. You've got people getting sick from, not just COVID, but the flu and all these things that have happened from immunity being kind of let go the past couple of years. And now people are getting sick. And that means you're having to do the job of not just your own, but sometimes your colleagues as well, because they're out. You've got people taking care of ailing parents, taking care of kids because daycares are shut down or kids are sick. And, all the while, inflation is happening, meaning people's bills are going up. And so all these pressures are kind of mounting up to the site team. And that's where we get to that boiling point as to one bad day could really break someone in the worst way.
Yeah, there's so much to unpack in what you just said. As somebody that used to operate properties as well, I would say, I think maybe my assumption would have been the number one source of stress and risk to mental wellness would be the interactions with the residents, as you were saying, which has always been hard. One thing about our business is because the lives of people, maybe hundreds of people, play out before us as operators. We see the worst of what happens to people, and sometimes that comes to our front door in the form of, I've lost my job, I can't afford to pay my rent, or I'm getting a divorce, and the job of the operator is to say, I'm sorry, you have to pay your rent. That's their job. That kind of interaction, I think, has always been hard. Now, as you just said, you have this additional stress of these people that we serve that live in our communities are under more stress than they were before. And now with the Great Resignation, there's fewer people sometimes to spread the work around. So where do we start if we want to promote the health and wellness of our folks? You mentioned, hey, ask people how they're doing. Can you be more proactive about getting in front of these issues?
Absolutely. I think communication and conversation is going to be key here. We learned that the past couple of years in terms of you cannot over communicate. It's important to set expectations with people on both ends. And I think employers have to understand that it's now a two-way street. I don't want to say that it was always about the employer in the past, but now as trends are moving forward, employees are really taking, the bull by the horns and saying, I want to find joy in my workplace and I want to be happy here. And so how do I do that? And they're setting higher expectations on the employer side. So it's kind of that two-way street. Outside of communication, I think it's just going to be really important to train your leaders in your company, what to look for in their teams. If you know that someone is having stressful moments or you know that they're going through things, be able to look for those signs. And how do you provide them assistance? One of the trainings that I just did this year, thanks to the National Apartment Association, was through the mental health first aid training. And that was a really cool program that NAA is going to be rolling out that really allows you to look for things within yourself, colleagues, family members, and others. What do you do? Now, what's interesting with a training like that is we're not expecting you to be a medical doctor, a therapist, a counselor, any of those things. You're not meant to treat them. You are meant to look for certain signs and things that can assist people and then get them the resources they need to be better. And that, I think, is going to really change how we look at things moving forward. I know a lot of the state and local apartment associations are going to start rolling out those trainings. And I think it'll be interesting to see how individuals take those trainings and then take them back to their company to assist.
Is there, on the therapy front, have you seen clients taking that to sort of the next level in terms of not just offering it, like many companies have EAP and you can, and that's available. So many people don't take advantage of that. Is there any movement to be more proactive about encouraging people to enter into some sort of minimal therapy, just as almost preventative in a way? Have you seen that? Is that something people are talking about?
They are, and they're talking about it in a way that they, one, want to explain compensation packages more clearly. Because when you mentioned it, that a lot of companies offer it, I guarantee you, if you ask employees and especially site teams, they, one, may not even know that it's offered through their company, and two, do they feel comfortable enough? Is anything really anonymous, Daniel? You have to think that that's very intimidating, especially for your site level teams, to say, okay, if I go and use a program like this, could my job be on the line? Would this be held against me later? So I think communicating that compensation package, what's important, how it's anonymous, how it'll benefit employees, and so forth. We're also seeing companies the past few years do things like mental wellness days. They'll offer several of them a year and you use it as you see fit. So this is aside from your paid time off, aside from your sick and vacation. This is aside from volunteer work, because many organizations are offering those days as well. This is, you get these days that you use however you wish. Maybe it's going to the doctor. Maybe it's just debriefing. Maybe it's binging Netflix all day. Whatever makes you happy and you find joy in that, it's really just getting away from the mundane day-to-day stuff and to really take a moment, take a breath. So we're seeing that. Meditation is another thing that we're seeing. There's a lot of cool apps out there now. At the past two companies, I've used Headspace that they've offered free. They paid for all employees to use it through their subscription plan. It's awesome. And it's, you choose whether you're going to use it or not, but how cool to have something like that that can help you. And meditation might be intimidating to some people. Don't think about it like that. Think about it as quiet time that you can reflect on what's happening in your day and your world around you. And there's a lot of different apps out there, not just that one, that will help you think about things and help you to work through anything you're going through.
I love that idea. Grace Hill is probably, unquestionably, I think, the leader in surveys in the industry. Are you seeing, is there any data you can share with respect to mental well-being that's come from these surveys, increase in trends in people reporting that they feel like their mental well-being has been impacted? Anything along those lines that you can share?
Yeah, some of our surveys, what we're noticing is that employees are burnout. Burnout is probably the number one term that they're using in the comment section. And burnout can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but ultimately they're tired. They have a lot going on. Those expectations we spoke about are high. And they're feeling overwhelmed. And so they're putting that on the survey. Even the surveys that we're doing on the resident side, we're getting feedback that they need different things than what they needed before. Their environment is needing to change. We're noticing that they're requesting more green space. They're requesting more natural lighting coming through their windows versus just the lighting that's in their home. These are things that people are noticing that is different because they've been forced and oftentimes during this pandemic to work from home or to be at home, whether they don't work from home or maybe they're just there because they've been sick for a period of time, and they're there and they know that this is not how they want to operate anymore. They're looking for ways for their well-being, things that make them happier. And so they're putting that on these surveys. And I think it's a great opportunity for companies to start thinking about their amenities packages, start thinking about the way that they're communicating with their residents and what's important to their residents. So that feedback itself is truly meaningful, and you can't put a price on that.
The other thing we touched on earlier is that that plays into the burnout scenario, I'm sure, is the Great Resignation and how it is much more difficult today than it was 3 years ago. It's always been difficult, I think, fair to say that. It's always been difficult to find great people in the business. Now it is more difficult than ever with options to work from home. People that choose to leave the industry can do probably as well without dealing with some of the mental health and stress issues that we're talking about, is the attention to the individual's mental well-being something that that companies can use to actually recruit folks to come work for them?
Absolutely. You want to be able to show employees, both current and new potential prospects, that you have a great company that's going to offer them support, because people don't feel supported like they should. They feel like there's so much pressure on them, the world is on their shoulders, and they need to know that they have help, that they have resources that are available to them, not just in the form of benefits like we've spoken about, but if you're a site team member, you want to know that your regional has your back or your VP has your back, and that they're able to assist you with streamlining operations and just being there if you need to vent. And I think that that's really important.
Yeah. Okay. Have we covered all the areas that I think are sources of stress for folks on site? Is there anything else that comes to mind?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing I think really comes down to residents, training those employees how to deal with conflict resolution. Because if you're already having a bad day, Daniel, and someone comes in and they're upset, they're real upset about whatever's going on in their home or lack of communication with the office, or they're upset about maintenance, whatever the case may be. It's hard as an on-site team member to not take that personal. Because if you feel like you're burnt out and you're working, you've burnt both ends of the candle. You're working long hours and you're putting in everything and doing your best. And now somebody comes in and challenges your best and what you've been doing. How do you not react to that? And people make threats now.
Yeah, and what's sad is that we take, as operators, we take great responsibility for the happiness and safety and well-being of the residents too. So, when somebody comes in and they're not happy, if it has nothing to do with you, you can take that very personally. And something else that I think we're seeing that now is sort of yet another burden for operators that you were talking about, is that now we have to be scanning for trafficking. Like, this is now something that yet another responsibility that we expect site teams to be on the lookout. Can you talk a little bit about that?
What's interesting about human trafficking, I like to tell the story of how that became an interest to me. And about 3.5 years ago, there was a large lawsuit that happened against multiple hotels, Marriott, Hilton. There were several of them that were included. And it was from a victim of human trafficking. And that victim sued those hotels, those chains, because she felt as though there were signs and signals and no one looked for them. When she was coming into these hotels being trafficked, the person at the front desk, the housekeeper, the janitor, there were people that could have noticed things. They were never trained to notice those things, or they turned an eye to it because it wasn't something, the whole I don't want to get involved. And she said, it all goes back to the whole when you see something, you say something movement. And when that happened and the press kind of started to release it, we got a heads up at NAA when I was working there that this was coming our way. And they said, typically if you follow the hospitality industry, whatever happens in the hospitality industry eventually will end up in multifamily. Sometimes it happens quick, sometimes it takes many years. And they said, we've got to get ahead of this. What can we do to get ahead of it? And that's when we started having conversations of there is a need for training, because on-site team members, they're seeing it without ever knowing that they're seeing it because they don't know what to look for. So what do you do? And that's when we started a partnership with I Empathize, and they are a nonprofit organization out of Orlando. And we partner with them because that's all they focus on is training other industries on human trafficking. They're probably most well known for truckers against trafficking. That was like their program that they created from nothing, because obviously truckers are on the road 24 hours a day and they're seeing so many different things. And that kind of escalated, and they train, even police divisions, they train so many companies, and now multifamily is one of those companies that they work with. And it's great. We actually had a client a couple of years ago when this first came out. They went to one of the conferences where I Empathize was speaking, and they said, this will never happen to us. This won't affect us. We are a luxury community. Our rents are super high. We've never had any issues like that. Daniel, 2 weeks later, we got a call from that person, which I can't tell you the company because they've always asked for it to be very anonymous. They said, we have a trafficker here. All the boxes are checked. We've called the hotline. This is what's happening. This was a person who said, there is no way this is happening in my backyard. Absolutely not. And it did.
Is there anything, I know this is probably a very complicated issue, but is there anything you can share, Stephanie, in the last few minutes that we have that might be helpful to folks who haven't had the training? Please get the training. But is there anything you can share, some signs that people should be looking for?
Sure. 21 million victims worldwide. Okay, so this is going to affect every community at some given point in time. Don't just look at what you think you know from the movies. Listen, I love some of the movies like Taken. I always say that the three-part Taken, that's a great movie. But what you see is not always factual. And we really have to debunk some of those myths so that you understand better what to look for. Some of the things that we tell people to look for, it may not be human trafficking. So for instance, if maintenance was to go into an apartment home and they see that there's 2 twin mattresses or 3 twin mattresses in each of the 3 bedrooms, okay, don't panic at that point. Obviously they're over occupancy and they're in violation of their lease agreement, but that's one right there. Did you have anyone who comes in that seems very scripted? Did the potential victim who would come in, not have an ID on them? Do they not understand necessarily where they're at, their location? Do you see a lot of movement from an apartment after hours? Is anybody in that apartment coming into the office and asking about cameras in the parking lot? There's a lot of things that start to add up. And those are all small things that you can start to look for. And we don't expect, and the training tells you this, but we don't expect, Daniel, for people to get involved. The last thing we want you to do is go confront someone in that apartment and make accusations against them. That's the beauty of the hotline, is that you call it. And actually now things have changed so much. You can text the hotline, you can text, email, and so forth. And it's great because you're able to give that information to someone else and let them investigate it.
Great. We will put that hotline, if you'll share that with us, we'll put the hotline in the show notes so people have access to that.
Absolutely.
Stephanie, in our last minute here, where's the industry headed, do you think, in terms of training and all things that Grace Hill is good at? Is there anything on the horizon that you think people need to be thinking about?
Mental health and human trafficking are both very big things. Mental health is going to translate to everything we do in our business. And so Grace Hill has been working on a policy for employees and employers that we will be putting out, and that is going to help you as a leader or even an employee, what to look for within yourself and what to look for in your teams, and how do you help and support other people. And I think that that's going to continue to be a thing, because I talk about flexibility a lot on my platform, Daniel, because it's so important. And I cannot tell you how many times people look at me and say, flexibility is only an opportunity at the corporate level. It is not for site teams. And I'm telling you, there are companies out there doing it, and they're doing it really, really well. And interestingly enough, they're the smaller companies that are doing it, that are making waves here. You need to understand that flexibility is not just everybody wants to work from home, because keep in mind, not everybody is wired that way. There are people that love interacting face to face in the office. How do you start to think about that? Easy. Start changing schedules. Start, making flexible shifts, hours, longer lunch breaks. There is a lot of things that you can do that cost your company nothing. And guess what? It's going to retain your employees, and it's going to allow them, when they come into the workplace, to be more productive, because they're more present, because they're able to focus on work, because they're able to take care of things at home more so than they were before.
Right on. Well, an often overlooked but yet important component of running communities is the human element here on the mental wellness side. So thank you for coming on today and talking a bit about that, Stephanie. It's been great.
Thank you for having me. If nothing else, I hope all of the listeners have really taken into context that I want you to try something new. 2023 is coming, and what we knew this year is now irrelevant. We're going to start from scratch again and rethink about how we're building things and doing things better.
It's a new day. Thanks, Stephanie. Good talking with you. Thank you for joining us at this week's episode of the Apartment Academy podcast. The Apartment Academy is a production of Leonardo 24/7, the industry's leader in multifamily operations and maintenance software. At Apartment Academy, we realize the hard work that goes into property management and the stress that comes along with it. Leonardo 24/7 takes the guesswork out of your team's day-to-day by providing customized daily guidance on tasks that need to be done, guaranteeing consistent operations across your entire portfolio. To learn more, visit www.leonardo247.com today.